Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bharti, moderator for the conference call. We welcome you all to Q1 FY22 conference call of Kiri Industries Limited, hosted by Aditya Birla Money. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company, which are based on the belief, opinion, and expectation of the company as on date of this call. These statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participants will be in listen only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then zero on your touchtone telephone. Please note that this conference is recorded. Mr. Sumit Shah of Aditya Birla Money. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Bharti, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Aditya Birla Money Limited, we welcome you all to Q1 FY22 earnings conference call of Kiri Industries Limited. From the management side, we have Mr. Manish Kiri, Managing Director, Mr. Jayesh Hirani, Senior Manager, Accounts and Finance, and Mr. Suresh Gondalia, Company Secretary. So without much delay, I now hand over the floor to the management for opening remarks, followed by the interactive Q&A session. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the earnings conference call for the first quarter of financial year 2022. I hope everyone is keeping safe, well, and getting vaccinated. As you already know that most businesses were impacted in the first quarter due to the second wave of COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown restrictions enforced subsequently. And unfortunately, Kiri's financial performance in quarter 1 FY22 was also impacted for the same reason. For QY FY22, the company achieved a consolidated turnover of 293 crores, which was 169% higher year-on-year basis, but down by 19% on quarter-on-quarter basis. The EBITDA reported for the quarter was 6.86%, and the net profit was 6.8 crore. The consolidated total comprehensive income was up by 257% year-on-year, as this also includes the share of profit of Dystar, which is associate company of Kiri, amounting to approximately 84 crore, and 16 crore from Longshin Kiri, which is a joint venture, which is consolidated with Kiri's financials. Kiri's standalone turnover during quarter 1 FY22 was approximately 200 crore, which was 191% higher on a year-on-year basis and lower by 27.5% on quarter-on-quarter basis. The EBITDA during Q1 FY22 was negative 3.29 crore on standalone basis as compared to positive EBITDA of 26.4 crore in quarter 4 FY21 and negative EBITDA of 20.23 crore during quarter 1 FY21 last year, same quarter. The uncertainties of business operations under partial lockdowns across India and also in certain affected countries globally in second wave during quarter 1 FY22 showed sharp and sudden increase in the basic chemicals and raw materials prices. In short term, because of the contractual obligations of running order book, as well as because of the market prices not going up, the passover of increased cost to customers was not fully possible. The current quarter's margins have been eroded mostly due to these reasons in raw material costs, which could not be passed on to the customers. Another important factor which is affecting this quarter is the ongoing high legal cost on account of litigation in Singapore court against Senda for the valuation of Dystar and buyout of stake of Kiri by Senda, and also Kiri's claim against Dystar for not treating Kiri as its preferred supplier impacted financial results. So legal cost on one side and raw material increases on the other side These two are the major factors affected this quarter. During quarter 1 FY22, receivables increased as a result of partial lockdown. Inventory levels climbed to some extent, as did payables, which are projected to normalize in the future quarters as COVID-19 impact fades. Coming to KIRI's minority operation suit, as you may have already known by now that the Singapore International Commercial Court has awarded a final valuation of $481.6 million for KIRI's 37.57% stake in Dystar. Both KIRI and Senda have filed appeals against SICC order, which are dated 21st December and 21st December 2020 and 21st June 2021 with Court of Appeal, which is Supreme Court of Singapore. And KIRI also has filed another appeal against SICC order that dated 17th March 2021. Hearing dates in the Supreme Court are awaited, and in case of KIRI's claim against Dystar, both the parties have also filed their closing submissions in this quarter, as well as cost submissions also filed in this quarter. And now the order from SICC is awaited at any time. Lastly, coming to future outlook, as you may be already aware that the Indian chemical sector is on the cusp of very high growth trajectory in the coming years. KIRI's entire product range of dyes, specialty intermediates, dye intermediates and other value-added specialty chemicals is poised to provide impetus to its order books for the exports and in the domestic market in second half of financial year 2022. It is important to highlight that the specialty intermediates plant, the first phase which has been operational since this last quarter, will be one of the main growth drivers which shall also enhance volumes and margins of the company in near future. I would like to now open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. If you have a question, please press star and 1 on your telephone keypad and wait for your turn to ask the question. If you would like to withdraw your request, you may do so by pressing star and 1 again. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please press star and 1 on your telephone keypad. First question comes from Nandan Ambit, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon, sir. Congratulations on the results. My one question, only one question, is with respect to the accrual of this associate share of profits. So, in the presentation which has been shared on the results, it is mentioned that the profit on account of associate has been accounted only to comply with respect to the accounting standards. So I wanted to understand the profits which the Dystar will earn or has earned after the cutoff date of the valuation date. Will they be received by KIRI or how will it be accounted?
So this is a very important point, and whatever profits Dystar has been making since July 2018, KIRI has not been privy to the excess of that profit because the valuation date was 3rd July 2018, and KIRI had requested for the interest to be paid to KIRI, if not profit, because the transaction date on which the actual transaction of buyout would take place would be far away from the valuation date. The court didn't award interest to KIRI for this time frame, and that's the reason that we have filed appeal in the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court would look into the matter whether KIRI can be awarded interest at least from the date of the valuation date till the transaction takes place. So it's in the court right now, and let us see what Supreme Court decides once the hearing takes place.
Sure, sir. Thank you. That's the only question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question comes from Vishal Jaju, an individual.
Good evening, team. Manish, first question was from to understand, sir, whether our industry, our basic sales of reactive dyes and all, whether they come from directly in terms of dyes industry, and if yes, then sir, in this quarter, our domestic sales of overall textile dye segment has seen a massive revenue growth because the export sales have been increased. While our revenue of export market has increased, however, domestic market had remained sluggish. I know there was an impact of COVID, but post-COVID, why was we have seen such a revenue drop in domestic market as far as with respect to export market, where we are gaining increasing revenue share, but not in domestic market?
Right. See, this is the quarter in which the dye sales as well as intermediate sales both got impacted, and main impact came from domestic market. Domestic textile market was almost on a standstill for a few months, and the sales, consumption, everything was on a standstill mode. Extremely low level of activities and extremely low level of sales took place, especially in 2 months, April and May. June partially started recovering. July turned out to be better than expected. But if you look at the entire quarter, the main impact, as you rightly said, came because of the dip in the domestic business. However, export has also got impact, right?
Yes.
And export of dyes also was lesser. Just to give you a little more insight, the exports of reactive dyes from India takes place to various countries, but the largest countries to which the exports happen are two, Turkey and Bangladesh. 50% of almost 40 to 50% of India's exports of dyes go to these two countries, and both the countries went through the lockdowns in this quarter. Turkey was having lockdown for almost 20-25 days, and the same situation was there in Bangladesh too. So export was impacted, but relatively lesser impact in export and higher impact in domestic market. While on the other side, the raw material prices and the raw material situation continue to remain higher. In fact, this quarter, the raw materials increased significantly. Prices of aniline, prices of sulfur, prices of naphthalene, a host of basic chemicals and raw materials, in fact, increased in prices. So on one end, lower demand and not being able to increase the finished product prices, while we ended up paying higher prices on the cost of raw materials. So that is how the overall industry situation prevailed in this quarter.
So, sir, is there any specific reason? Because in this current quarter, I've seen many of the textile dyes manufacturing companies. They have shown a rapid sales due to increase in exports, which Indian textile sector is facing up. So, are we facing the competition of increasing raw material prices, or there is a China competition effect which we are seeing due to this standstill? April month was sluggish. However, the overall sales of the textile segment is going up and in dyes. So are we facing from the raw material issue front, or we are facing issue in front of China competition?
In this quarter, April to June quarter, textile sales, I think, has not increased. Number one. Number two, overall dyes exports has reduced, right?
Okay.
For example, in month of May, India usually exports somewhere around 16 to 18,000 tons of dyes, correct?
Okay.
Now, April, May, especially month of May, it was only 12,000 tons. I'm talking about India's overall exports. Okay?
Yes.
Similar situation was in June too, right?
Okay.
So June, India's exports of reactive dyes reduced by another 3 to 4,000 tons, correct? So overall, country's exports of dyes in this quarter was also down by like 25-30%.
Okay.
It's not like Kiri is a unique case whose export reduced and other competitors' export increased. India's overall exports also reduced in this quarter.
Yes, yes, yes. So, sir, are we seeing any, recently in this quarter, have we seen any uptick in like the June month and this coming starting July?
This month, from July onwards, things have started recovering. Export has resuming back slowly. Domestic market has opened up. Domestic textile units have started consuming dyes also. Their activities have increased. So this quarter would be much better quarter compared to last quarter. So
And sir,
so we are expecting at least 30% increase of business in this quarter compared to last quarter.
okay, that's good. That's good, sir. And sir, on raw material front, as you said, the prices of aniline have been rising sharply in this quarter. So, are we expecting this to be cool off, and eventually we were also have EC approval for aniline? So, is management is thinking for backward integration of all this dye segment and also start manufacturing certain of the raw material which we are facing issues currently?
Just to answer your first question regarding the price movements of aniline, by end of last year, right, and
Yes.
to some extent the fourth quarter of last financial year, prices started rising from around 55 to 60 rupees. And in April to June quarter, it went as high as 210 rupees. Okay.
Oh, okay.
It tapered down, and right now it's 140 to 150 rupees, depending on domestic or import. Correct? So
Yes.
still, if you consider 60 rupees of original price, end of
It's still
last,
double, more than double.
and now the price is more than double today. Okay.
Okay.
And these prices are continuing this quarter. We forecast that it would not come down much. But on the other hand, dyes prices and intermediate prices might go up, and we might be able to pass on the pricing in the finished products. Okay.
Okay.
So that's the price fluctuation related to aniline. Aniline and related products definitely is the project which was under evaluation. Company is seriously thinking about it, which involves a large investment. Company also has environment clearances in place, and,
Yes.
and once the funds availability is there, we will consider this as one of the prospective projects. But yes, that's one of the projects that is under radar.
And sir, is there any expectation regarding the dye fund, till when period can we expect the fund to be dispersed till by the end of March 2022?
Expecting so, because now Supreme Court process is ongoing. Supreme Court filings are also taking place, and we would have more clarity in the next case management conference, which will be the case management conference of Supreme Court. And we are expecting probably by November or December is a vacation month, or latest by January we must have Supreme Court final hearing. So once that hearing date is known, we would know the definitive timelines for closing of the legal case in Supreme Court, and thereby the execution of buyout order.
Okay. And so one last final question. So would just like to know if we plan of any expansion, then what are we planning? Are we also planning for debt, or we will be just plan for expansion only from the fund we receive from Dystar? So are we also planning for increase taking the debt and expanding the other business segment which we were discussing since last 2 to 3 quarters? So what we are targeting to implement those new business line, or I must say the new segment where we are driving in. So will this be from Dystar fund, or we are also planning to kickstart it early by taking few debt, and if the fund comes up, then we can pay off the debt at the future time, and at least we can have a start of the business as of now. So means 1 to 2 years down the line. So what's your view on this?
Number one, it would be for the future projects and future expansions, it would definitely be equity and debt ratio both, right? We have only equity. Kiri's board has also deliberated on this point, and we would have adequate debt and adequate equity, and that is how we would be able to increase return on equity for the future expansions and new projects that the company would be investing in, right? So it would be both with adequate ratio. That's number one. Number two, we would not raise debt first and then like a bridge loan and then pay back. That's not the plans are, because the projects are large, risk involves are more, and we would be optimizing our risk to start those large projects, sizable projects, once we have definitive clarity on the Singapore funds, which would be used as equity. So we would wait till we have those funds available, but parallelly, company would or might also tie up debt. So debt can be tied up, financial closure can be reached, but actual availment of borrowing would only take place once we start implementing project, once we have debt, equity all secured. We would not project and then halfway we get stuck in the limbo. We will have absolute clarity when we start, when we are going to end, how we are going to execute, and we will have tight timelines to execute the project. So we would do both at a time and not earlier that.
Okay, that's great to hear. That's great to hear the clarification. So I guess we must expect, the confirmation when we will be expand in the December quarter when we have the Singapore hearing as well. So at that time, I guess management would be fully focused on where will be the next project line we will be focusing, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's it from my side.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please press star and 1 on your telephone keypad. Next question comes from Abhishek, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir. I have a few questions. Hello?
Yes, please. Yes, Abhishek.
Yes, sir. The first question is on the first participant question. The amount what we are considering in our balance sheet from Dystar, like you have shown in Q1 from 83 crores. So when the court has given the orders that interest would not be payable and we would not be entitled for the profit also after 2018, had it not been prudent to not consider this amount?
Well, as Kiri continued to be shareholder, and please understand, court has not said that you would not be entitled for the profit. Let me just clarify, right? Today, Dystar, if wishes, and the Dystar board can still give dividend, right? Whatever earnings which is happening, Kiri's stake continue to be there, and to the proportion to Kiri's stake, that profit technically belongs to Kiri, right? Till the buyout transaction takes place. Okay. Now, valuation is dated on 3rd July 2018, and that valuation, when was determined, must have also considered the projections of the company, isn't it? So whenever the valuers submitted value and court arrived to a number on that particular date of valuation, it also considered how Dystar would be performing in future. Correct? Now, definitely we strongly believe that Kiri should get something because post valuation date and till transaction date, and let us say in a worst case scenario of transaction is not taking place. Correct? So Kiri cannot stop its consolidation, its share of profit which belongs to Kiri till the day the buyout is actually executed.
No, sir. I have a different point. What I'm saying is, you are saying that when the valuation was decided, they would have taken the future cash flow into consideration and arrived on the value. So
Correct.
that the value comprises of the projection what we are showing now, right? So when the actual value will be given to us, then this
Right.
cash flow, whatever we are showing now, will not accrue to us. And in case bank does not, in case the court does not entitle us for the interest, then all this will be taken off from.
So that is the reason that this disclosure is there.
So how much we have included as of now in our balance sheet or profit, this profit accrual from the Dystar?
See, Dystar accrual you would see from our financials, annual report or quarterly results, right? And those numbers are already there. Post July 2003 numbers are there, and before are also there. So that those numbers are there.
Okay, so whenever that valuation also say 500 million will arrive, so we will deduct the amount what we have already considered in our balance sheet, and the remaining amount will be shown, right?
No. The accounting would not work like that. We would continue to consolidate. We have to mandatorily till buyout takes place, and on the buyout, it would be against the original investment of Kiri. For example, 2010, Kiri invested close to 100 crore, and this would be accounted as a capital gain on sale of shares. Right, whatever Kiri accrued, accounted for till that date would remain in the balance sheet of Kiri, isn't it?
No, this point is correct, sir. Say 500 million, and we had bought, I don't know the exact figure, say 100 million for Dystar. So 400 million is the amount, capital gain.
It was precisely 100 crore. It was about 100 crore, and this would be coming 3,600 crore. That's the delta.
Correct. So this amount what we are showing, like 83 crore we have shown, this amount is not coming to us. This amount what you are taking is also the profit.
Coming to us, what you are mentioning is in the form of liquidity, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
You are referring to liquidity, right? So accounting is not done on the basis of liquidity, isn't it? Liquidity is a subject to the decision to the board. Your accrued profit is yours. That comes to you as a liquidity. For example, tomorrow when Supreme Court examines the whole issue and Supreme Court realizes that Dystar continue to make profits in all these 3 years, where Kiri as a minority shareholder has been oppressed and has been deprived of earnings for 3.5 years, correct? So it's up to the court to recognize the fact that Kiri's 3 years, the date from the valuation and the date of transaction, Kiri has accrued this kind of money but not paid to Kiri because of dividend not given to Kiri. So Kiri has been deprived of liquidity, and that liquidity not giving that liquidity to Kiri is also part of the continuing minority operation. That's what Kiri has claimed, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
But it is up to the court to do a justice here, because it is possible that there is no precedence in the courts where your valuation date and your transaction date, both the dates are too far from each other. So it's also a test case for Singapore Supreme Court to decide. But do we conclude that this profit is not belonging to Kiri, even if Kiri continue to shareholder? Is it right to do it? I don't think so.
No, sir. What I am saying is, since this money is not at all coming, so we should have parked this figure somewhere else, not in the profit and loss statement actually.
Where you can park? Which other place you park it?
To be very frank, I am not an accounting expert.
So
maybe a long-term assets we should have shown.
I don't think so. The whatever accounting has been done prudently. Wherever it has to be shown, wherever it has to be parked, and company has no, I mean, no, you company has no intent to misrepresent anything to you. Let me clarify that. Whatever has been accounted for is true and correct. Whatever has been disclosed is also true and correct. Whatever belongs to Kiri is also true and correct.
Right. And this figure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek sir. You may join the queue for your further questions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please press star and one on your telephone keypad, and participants are kindly requested to restrict with 2 questions in the initial round and may join the queue for further questions. Next question comes from Suyesh Sarovi from First Capital Market. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. So my question was, what is the quantum of the legal expense that we have incurred in this quarter?
Well, let me give you that number. If we had not incurred legal expense in this quarter, our EBITDA would have been 4.5%. So,
Okay.
so that means that our legal expense is north of 12 crore.
North of 12 crore. Until this run rate will be there for the next 3 quarters for this year, because we expect the money by March 2022.
Yes, at least till Supreme Court work is going on, the expenses are going to continue, and you are right. I'm sure till December it would continue, but if hearing comes earlier in November, then last quarter it would go down. But if hearing extends to January, then we would see also legal expenses with a similar level in the last quarter too. So this year, on a safer side, we can say that we will have to incur these expenses.
Okay. And any idea on the date for hearing for Supreme Court? By when can we expect to get a date?
I think we should have clarity in our next case management conference. So case management conference from Supreme Court is expected to take place based on our lawyer's advice in this month, in August. So by August we should know. And the moment we learn the date of Supreme Court hearing, it would be just a 1-day hearing. We will immediately announce. But looking at the activities currently, I can tell you that earliest it would be November based on the current status, and the latest it would be January, because December is the closing month, looking at the other submissions timelines.
Okay. And so last con call you had said that we would be enforcing the order in the meantime, the order that we got from SICC. So are we taking some concrete steps for that?
Yeah, the steps are already ongoing as we speak. So the enforcement actions are already going on. Till now, Senda has not got a stay, by the way. Okay. And stay is not there on the SICC order. So we are following up. Lawyers are sending the necessary legal notices, and that enforcement is already on.
So we can expect. So if we ask the court for enforcement, then can we expect money to come in before the Supreme Court hears the matter?
Because Kiri has also gone in appeal.
Yeah.
Right. So the issue here, which is that both the parties are in appeal, and that may change the approach to little bit on a soft side. You understand what I mean? Because Kiri,
right. Since we've also taken a stance towards appeal of the earlier order, so court may not be inclined to.
Taken a stance that we don't accept 481. Right, according to Kiri, maybe it's 700, 800, whatever it comes to, right?
Are we also being reimbursed for legal costs that have been incurred in the past?
Yeah, so illegal costs already been awarded to Kiri till July 3rd, 2018, right?
Okay.
And Kiri has already submitted, and the last cost submission, even for this valuation trial, is the one round has already been done, and the last submissions are on August 18. So cost submissions would also get completed on August 18, and subsequent to that, we would get cost order as a separate order from SICC with the amount awarded to Kiri.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, please press star and 1 on your telephone keypad, and participants are kindly requested to restrict with 2 questions in the initial round and may join the queue for further questions. Next question comes from Naushad Chaudhary from Systematic Shares. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. Just one question I have. Sir, just wanted to understand, given the optimism which is building in around our domestic textile industry, wanted to understand if now we are talking after this opening up of post-second lockdown, has there been any change in terms of talks when you do with the client? Is there any optimism you on the ground also experiencing from the domestic client, specifically for textile industry? What has been your experience, if you can share that?
Sure. See, we have regular interactions with customers as well as industry players, and everyone is expecting a robust growth, a significant growth along with textile. So when textile exports has been now one of the key focus areas for the government, at the same time from our exports of dyes, we also see very positive messages. So hopefully in the next 2 quarters we might see increase in overall business. Hopefully, if COVID-19 related issues do not disturb the situation again. At the same time, we see and there is a fear of uncertainty everywhere, and it would be correct to say that it's very difficult in today's time to precisely predict or forecast customer demands and the market demands for anyone. Even though there is optimism, even though the expectations of increase of business is there, at the same time we experience uncertainty too. So let's see how actual performance happens, how actual sales and demands and the exports of India increases, and then we try to better understand what pace we can grow in the next few years.
Okay. And just follow up to this, given your past experiences with the textile industry and whatever the government has planned, to double, triple or multi-fold the capacities, and if there is a higher growth in the textile industry, let's say for next 5 years, let's assume if the industry is growing at 10 or 12%, would it be fair to assume that our industry would also grow in the similar line or slightly higher than that percentage?
Absolutely, it would be at least similar or slightly higher for export part. But whatever rate at which textile grows, dyes industry also grow complementary at a same percentage, the same level, and because it goes parallel. Whatever we are able to increase in terms of exports to again counter and provide an alternate to China, that growth will be incremental to the domestic growth. So let's hope that even export growth also goes up. And see, Chinese textile exports have been facing a lot of challenges, including sanctions of use of cotton, which you must have read in the news, and that would provide other countries to capture orders and to capture market of textile processing. Hopefully, we should be able to follow that move, and we should be able to cater to those textile processing customers who get that the business diverted from China. That is where the growth will take place.
Thank you, sir. Next question comes from VP Rajesh from Banyan Capital Advisors. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Anybody? Hello?
Yes, Mr. Rajesh, please go ahead with your question.
Okay. Hi, Manish. My first question on the Dystar, just on this issue of the profits that we are booking, all these will be reversed based on the judgment that we get. Isn't it correct?
See, the judgment we already have in place, in which we are awarded. Okay. Now when the actual transaction takes place,
right,
and when the actual shares are sold, and whatever Kiri gain at that time, right, that gain would not be compensating. You mean to say that since July 2018, whatever profit Kiri has consolidated in Dystar books, we will have to reverse that consolidation? That's what your question is?
Yes, I'm just trying to understand from the...
I don't think so.
Because...
It would not be possible from even accounting perspective too.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
And we will have to continue to consolidate, continue till the shares are actually sold.
I see. Okay.
Whether we get liquidity on that consolidation is a separate part, but that profit continue to belong to Kiri till Kiri holds shares of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. No, okay, understood. And then the second related question is that in the Supreme Court when you are doing the appeal,
right,
are you also claiming that these profits belong to Kiri, and therefore we should be getting some compensation for all these profits from 2018 onwards? Is that part of your submission also?
Yes, exactly. That is there in our submission. So we are telling Supreme Court that, see, we have been deprived of this earnings all these years, right? Because transaction date is away from the valuation date, and
correct,
we should be compensated with something. Either you give us in the form of the interest on the valuation number or anything, because during this time the oppressor is benefiting at the cost of at the cost of minority shareholder, isn't it? Right. So you would be pocketing all this money, oppressing the minority shareholder, and then enjoying that. See, how can that be justified? I hope I'm clear in the arguments that we are. I'm trying to explain to you, which we are lengthily putting in the Supreme Court submissions.
Yes, it's very clear. There is value of money, and therefore you are asking that value should accrue to the Kiri shareholders, and that's crystal clear.
Exactly.
My second question is that once the money comes, are we still thinking about some kind of buyback or special dividend aside from the large capex that we are planning to get into specialty chemicals?
Yes, that would also be one of the objectives. Correct.
Okay. And then on the business front, you are saying that the business is coming back. So, what the guidance you gave in the last, does that still stand, or are you thinking of changing that given the results of the Q1 basically?
Yeah. See, the experience of Q1 and the impact of second quarter was more than what we could predict, to be honestly with you, right? Now for the rest of the year, we would have to revise our forecast, and we would have to give guidance which would not hold valid what we thought at the end of the year, financial year 2021, right? So we'll have to taper down our expectations for the whole year.
Okay. So what would be the growth this year then?
If we look at the next 3 quarters, we would try to at least achieve, for example, our internal expectations is 260 to 270 crore in this quarter, and then touch to 290 or 300 in the remaining 2 quarters. Again, this is all prediction based on we do not get hit with another problem of COVID wave. So with that, we should end up here with at least 900 crore, possibly touching 1,000. Right. So that would be the top line. And EBITDA, even if we achieve in the next 3 quarters on a standalone basis, post legal expenses. See, another big impact in our EBITDA comparison with other peer companies would be the significant legal cost. And that legal cost has an impact of somewhere around 4% to 6% depending on the quarter. That's how the legal cost is impacting our EBITDA. So post legal cost, even if we achieve between 8 to 10% on 1,000 crore sales, that is what we may end up with. On a standalone.
Thank you.
On a standalone.
I got it. I will get back to you more.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question comes from Karan Asli from Maximal Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. I have a question regarding the volume and realization for Q1 across basic chemicals, dye intermediaries, and dyes. The volume and realization for Q1 across basic chemicals, intermediaries, and dyes.
Right. So I'll just give you the numbers. Hold on just 1 second.
Sure.
Right, which is down by 26%, correct? Right, and volume down. So if we compare quarter on quarter, right? So for dyes, it was 2,111 tons, which was quarter on quarter basis. Volume wise, it was down by 37%. Volume wise, if you look at dyes intermediates, which was down by 35%, and the volume was 5,644 tons of tonnage. But I'm talking about earlier quarter. So compared to earlier quarter, it was down. Of course, if you compare last year same quarter, which was completely locked down, actually the volumes are much higher compared to last year same quarter. But if we compare a good quarter, which was the last quarter of last financial year, then dyes volumes down by 37% and intermediates volume down by 35%.
Got it, sir. And any idea about the realizations, how they played out in the first quarter?
Right. So the average dyes realization was 259 rupees, while average intermediate realization was 325 rupees. If I give you the realization on a key intermediates, for example, right? So vinyl sulfone realization was at 257 rupees. HSL realization was at 371 rupees. So that's how the realization. But sometimes the realization in terms of sales price may not give you a correct picture because the raw materials, as I explained earlier, went up drastically. So there is a significant increase from the raw material side, which impacted the margins and experienced shrinkage of margin.
Got it. And what will be the main reason for these increase in raw materials? Was there any supply shortage or was it just a normal market forces?
I think mainly driven by the supply shortages non-import from China, because products like aniline, sulfur, import is a significant portion even as on today for India, and hence aniline didn't arrive for months and months. 65% of our requirements are fulfilled by import, the domestic consumption. So that was one factor. Second is huge freight cost. Now freight cost and import and export freight cost internationally have been like a madness, and those higher freight costs also impacted the price increases. Few products like sulfur became worldwide shortage. Not only India was short, so international price was significantly high. And second factor, which is reflecting all these price increases, increase in crude oil, increase in benzene prices. So benzene touched almost $1,100 per ton, which was considerably higher price for even benzene, which can impact directly the price of aniline and other intermediates which are based on benzene. So these are the factors impacted the raw materials increases.
Understood, sir. And so you had mentioned that the entire passover was not possible in the first quarter, but since then, have you been able to kind of adjust the prices according to the increased raw materials?
Yes. Now, from July onwards, we are able to pass on some of these increases, and at the same time, cost of certain raw materials also gone down. So, as I mentioned earlier, aniline increased as high as 210 rupees, which is now tapered down to 140 to 150 rupees. On the other side, the prices of vinyl sulfone got improved. Similarly, prices of HSL also improved from 340-50 rupees to now 360-70 rupees. So some passing on is taking place. At the same time, certain raw materials also came down. So that will help in this quarter.
Sure. And what would be the capex that you have planned over this year and the next?
Right now, capex is very minimum, put on hold currently. Only thing which we will try to complete in the next quarters might be the second phase of our specialty intermediate plant, and very little investment is left for that. But I would say that for this year, capex is almost on hold.
Okay, got it. That's it from my side. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Next question comes from Ashish Koti, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Ashit here.
Good afternoon,
I want to ask a few things. One is with regards to... Just one sec, sir. Just one sec. Hello? Yeah. I just wanted to ask a few things. One was with regards to this rising raw material prices. That would be applicable across the counters, across the manufacturers across the world, right, sir?
Yes, which is true. These prices are globally impacted. True.
So, in that sense, that would not directly impact from the competitiveness.
It impacts when your demand is low and everyone wants to sell their products, right? So if demand is normalized, it usually doesn't impact on finished product side, but or impact is temporary. Let me put it this way: till you pass on to your finished products. But when your demand is less, then everyone wants to sell their production, and that would impact your sales price and impact the margin.
Okay. If you have to compare our company, Kiri, with Sudarshan, Vidhi, or Vagaria Dynamic, or Akshar, or a couple of them, where are we in terms of sales profitability?
So for example, if you take Sudarshan is not in the category of the products of Kiri. There is not even a single product which is common between Kiri and Sudarshan, right? And Sudarshan, Kiri, Bagaria, Aksarchem, because Sudarshan is in the pigment business of colorant industry, right?
Okay.
Now, pigments and driving factors, demand of pigments are different from driving factors for dyes, right? For example, driving factors for Sudarshan for pigments are paint, ink, and plastics, right?
Right.
Which are different from textiles, and textiles was 65% to 70% of dyes used in textiles. So driving factors for other companies are different. Number one. Number two, the comparable factors between Kiri, Bagaria, Aksarchem, they are in the same industry. Bagaria, Aksarchem are not into dyes in the finish end. Kiri is more integrated to the end user level. They are more into intermediate and into dyes. Number two, the same industry comparable. When you compare margins on intermediates and margins on integrated companies, they would be somewhat different but in line. Besides that, Kiri, you have to consider the legal expenses, which other companies do not have, right? So post-legal expenses, the EBITDA margins would be more or less parallel, maybe a few percentage here and there from the business operations perspective. But when you compare them with other exceptional items like profits from solar plants and things like that, then it would be different.
Okay.
Yep.
So are we planning to get into a higher value addition?
We are planning to get into the various intermediate. Trying to do is to improve our product mix on more of an intermediate levels. An addition of new intermediates, new products, non-textile industry related, like performance chemicals. Some of the intermediates we just started are for agrochemicals, right? So those are the places where we are already growing. We have invested for. We have to capitalize on our already investments which have taken place and which are getting completed. So we will do so.
So those results would be reflective only in FY23.
Some will come in FY22 too.
Okay, right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question comes from Sanjay Mahajan, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Sanjay.
Manishji, first of all, I missed to congratulate you on the last call. I have seen most of your public communication, including one with the Valorem, and I should say you walk the talk, and hats off to you. And the most strongest quality that an entrepreneur needs is the grit. That's the top quality, and that's been already demonstrated by you by trying to fight out this big battle with Dystar.
Thank you.
But as an individual, my concern stems from the standalone number. So if I see the data from 2007 till date, our revenues still looks to be on a slightly on a stagnated level. So what are the management plan, irrespective of the Dystar case, to strengthen this business, the ongoing business, or how are we positioning ourselves for any of the unseen this calamity regarding the Dystar? Because on the standalone level also, if I look the business, whatever you have been doing, I do not have any doubt as a management, but I have concerns regarding the segment wherein I am invested with you.
Yes, and your concerns are right concerns, and our focus besides Dystar case is to improve our standalone performance and our standalone product portfolio. That is the prime priority for the management. Now, to address that, we have been investing in last 2.5 years actually. Unfortunately, post-COVID, we could take benefit, but today, by the end of this financial year, company would have enough assets. Company would have invested for these two new buildings and the specialty intermediate facilities. When we are able to penetrate those products and the markets with market support in the next year or two, we can increase our top line as high as 1,800 to 2,000 crore only on the existing investments, right? So our next objective is to improve standalone performance, to increase our profitability on a standalone basis, and with more intermediate in the product basket, we would see less uncertainty with some of the diversified products, not only for textile industry, also used in other industries. So the idea is to de-risk ourselves, not totally linked with textiles and dyes, but also to add to all these products which we have already started, and to get that reflected into our financial performance. So the key is that our quarterly revenue increases from 250 to 270 to 300, 350 and 400 with existing investments only, without any more new investments. So now the plan is to get this reflected into the numbers in this year and next year.
Okay. And in continuation of the same thing, in the last con call you had mentioned that we are strengthening our core team or the board, wherein ex GNFC and ex Deepak Nitrite individuals are also roped in for our future plans. So is this for the current business or the future business?
For the future businesses, not for the current businesses. We have further strengthened. There are new hires have also taken place, and we are strengthening the management bandwidth for the future projects, for the businesses that we will enter into, which would be non-dyes and intermediate business.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sir, last question regarding the FCCB conversions. Do the management intend to increase their stake as and when there is a possibility?
Undoubtedly, right? So management would definitely try to increase their stake. Absolutely. It's one of the priority items at promoters levels.
Well, wish you all the best, sir, and we are very happy and have a full faith in your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have a follow-up question from Suyesh Sarovi from First Capital Market. Please go ahead.
So my question was regarding China. You had mentioned that China is becoming uncompetitive regarding India as compared to India in dyes and dye intermediaries. So has that situation changed post-COVID, or is it the same that you were seeing 3 quarters back?
I think the situation, let me elaborate a little bit. The reason India is more competitive and continue to be more competitive compared to China, the factor which goes in is the differential policy and tax policy at China. So for China to export dyes and majority of the intermediates, either they do not give refund of VAT, or Chinese government for some intermediates give partial refund of VAT. That means that China has already in practice today the indirect export tax, and that is what making our prices and our industry to capture more export market in the countries other than China, right? So that competitiveness continue because of this main factor which I explained to you. Number 2, China also went through some of the demand slowness, and Chinese reduced their prices of dyes and intermediates in the last quarter as well as this quarter also, and that is one of the factors that would affect our prices too. For example, when China offers H-acid price of $4.8 in international market, as well as to India, we cannot go above it. That puts a cap on our price increasing ability, right? Now, you imagine the situation where our industry, Kiri as well as others, will have to import aniline from China, right, with anti-dumping duty, because domestic production is only 35%. And then after paying that anti-dumping duty, we will have to compete against China in the finished product, which is vinyl sulfone, right, and match their pricing. So there are certain factors where we also need to improve in future to be self-reliant if we want to have even more competitiveness against China, which will happen over the years. But currently we will have to, on one side, depend on some raw materials on China, on the other side compete also with China.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have a follow-up question from VP Rajesh from Banyan Capital Advisors. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Just on the margin side, EBITDA margin side, you were saying that the guidance for this quarter will be, for this year will be around 7 or 8%. And on the last call, we were talking about 14% kind of EBITDA margin. So if you can just explain that, why there is this significant delta, because I assume even in 14% you were taking some of the legal costs, etc., also into account.
Right. See, the unprecedented increase of the raw material prices that we have seen in the first quarter of this financial year has changed dynamics and the optimism, and that is the reason we had to recast ourselves, because we could not at that time it was not expected that the acetic acid price will reach to, for example, 100 rupees, right, aniline to 200 rupees, and if you look at sulfur still going on 21 rupees, which was 7 rupees. So one single factor which has impacted the EBITDA forecast is the hike of raw materials and hike in freight, especially international freight. Today, if you want to send a container to Brazil or to Central America or to some extent US, you are talking about $10,000 to $13,000 a container. And you would see that in some of the import items like naphthalene. So naphthalene is $100 a ton, and you would be paying $150 $200 a ton of the freight. So freight portion is also eating away a couple of percentage of EBITDA. So raw material price hike and freight, uncertainty in freight and the increase in international freights have impacted our forecast, and that's the reason that we are revising. And again, if situation changes, if the raw material prices go back to the original levels, we might see some positiveness, but we don't see it in the next quarter happening, and hence we continue to revise it.
Got it. Thank you for a comprehensive answer. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have a follow-up question from Mr. Abhishek, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity again, sir. Just one question. How many times one can appeal in court? Like we had order from SICC, but the company Senda has again gone or filed appeal against it. So how many times can it be done?
See, appeal can be done only one time for one order.
Okay.
Appeal cannot be done two times for one order, correct? So for example, we have now valuation order in place, and actually valuation final order came on 21st of June, correct? Earlier there were two interim orders that we received from the court, right? So one order so starting from December 2020. So once this final order is in place now, this appeal would be a one appeal and the last appeal. There is no other order that can be subject to appeal. And all these interim orders appeal questions would be clubbed into one final hearing now, because it's all relates to valuation order.
Okay, so this should be the last one.
Should be the last appeal. There is no further appeal after this.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that would be the last question for the day. Now I hand over the floor to the management for closing comments.
Thank you. Thank you all of you for participating today's conference call, and we'll see you in next quarter. I wish all of you to be safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Aditya Birla Money, this concludes the conference call for today. Thank you for your participation, and you may disconnect your lines now. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.